Adolf Hitler, a name that echoes through history, was a man of paradoxes, a failed artist who turned into a dictator. Born in the late 19th century, in the year 1889, Hitler entered the world in the small Austrian town of Braunau am Inn, a place far removed from the grandeur and terror he would later command. As a young man, Hitler held a deep passion for the arts. He yearned to become an artist, a painter who could capture the beauty of the world on canvas. But this dream was dashed against the harsh rocks of reality when the Vienna Academy of Fine Arts rejected him, not once, but twice. Disappointed but undeterred, Hitler decided to live in Vienna, immersing himself in a life of solitude and struggle, attempting to make ends meet as a struggling painter. In these quiet, humble beginnings, there was little indication of the cataclysmic force he would become. His love for art was not limited to painting alone. Music, too, held a special place in his heart. He was particularly fascinated with the operas of Richard Wagner, finding solace and inspiration in their powerful narratives and sweeping orchestrations. Wagner's operas, filled with drama and intensity, perhaps foreshadowed the tumultuous and dramatic course Hitler's life would later take. In the midst of his struggle and his art, Hitler was also forming his worldview, a perspective that would fuel his rise to power and his devastating reign. His experiences in Vienna, from his rejection by the Academy to his days of poverty, played a significant role in shaping his ideology and his sense of destiny. From the streets of Vienna, Hitler was poised for a path that would lead him to a chilling place in history. This path, however, was not a straight and predictable one. It was a path filled with twists and turns, with triumphs and failures, a path that took a failed artist from the cobbled streets of Vienna to the highest echelons of power. World War I was a turning point in Hitler's life, transforming him from an aspiring artist into a decorated soldier. The year was 1914 when Adolf Hitler, an aspiring artist with a love for opera and a dream of attending the Vienna Academy of Fine Arts, enlisted in the German army. The world, as he knew it, was about to change drastically. The battlefield became his canvas, and his comrades, his subjects. Hitler was not just a soldier, he was a brave and dedicated one. His fearless nature shone through in the heat of battle. Despite the chaos and destruction around him, Hitler displayed extraordinary courage. He served as a runner, one of the most dangerous roles in the German army, carrying messages back and forth from the front lines. This was a man who was willing to risk his life for his country, and his valor did not go unnoticed. In recognition of his bravery, Hitler was awarded the Iron Cross Second Class in December of 1914, and later the Iron Cross First Class, an honor rarely given to a foot soldier like him. He was also awarded the Black Wound Badge for his injuries in the line of duty. But the war was not just a period of bravery and honor for Hitler, it was a time of transformation. The defeat of Germany was a bitter pill to swallow. It stirred in him a deep resentment against the supposed internal enemies who he believed had stabbed Germany in the back. This defeat, coupled with the punitive Treaty of Versailles, fueled a burning desire within him to restore Germany to its former glory. In the aftermath, Hitler found himself in disillusionment and disarray, like many of his fellow soldiers. But unlike others, he channeled his disillusionment into a potent political ideology, one that would change the course of history. The end of the war was not a closure for Hitler, but rather a spark that ignited his political ambitions. The soldier's journey had ended, but the journey of the politician was just about to begin. Unbeknownst to the world, a dictator was being forged in the fires of war. In the ashes of post-war Germany, Hitler found the fertile ground to sow the seeds of his political career. The nation, devastated by the harsh terms of the Treaty of Versailles and the economic hardship of the 1920s, was ripe for the rise of a charismatic leader promising change. Adolf Hitler emerged from obscurity, taking an active role in the formation of the National Socialist German Workers' Party, better known as the Nazi Party. Hitler's powerful speeches and propaganda played on the fears and frustrations of the German people, promising them a return to glory. The Nazi Party swiftly grew in popularity, harnessing a volatile combination of nationalistic fervor, anti-Semitic sentiment, and anti-communist rhetoric. In 1923, Hitler and his followers staged the infamous Beer Hall Putsch, a failed coup attempt to seize control of the Bavarian government. The failure of the putsch led to Hitler's arrest, but it also gave him a national platform. During his imprisonment, Hitler penned Mein Kampf, a work outlining his ideology and future plans for Germany. In the book, Hitler laid out his vision of a racially pure totalitarian Germany, blaming Jews for Germany's problems and calling for their elimination. This venomous anti-Semitic rhetoric would become a cornerstone of Nazi ideology and eventually the Holocaust. Following his release from prison, Hitler worked tirelessly to rebuild the Nazi Party. He capitalized on economic instability, political unrest, and the general disillusionment of the German people. By the early 30s, the Nazis were the largest party in the German Reichstag, and in 1933, Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany. Hitler's rise to power was marked by his ability to manipulate public sentiment, his unflinching pursuit of a dangerous ideology, and an uncanny knack for capitalizing on the political climate of the time. As Chancellor, he would implement policies leading to Hitler's rule was a reign of terror that plunged the world into the deadliest conflict in human history. It was under his command that a series of policies were implemented, setting the stage for World War II. The most horrific of these was the systematic genocide now known as the Holocaust, where an estimated 6 million Jews lost their lives. This was not a sudden burst of violence but a calculated, methodical plan of extermination, conceived and carried out with chilling efficiency. Jews were rounded up, packed into ghettos, and eventually transported to concentration camps. There, in places like Auschwitz, Treblinka, and others, they were subjected to unimaginable cruelty, starved, worked to death, or murdered outright. It was a horrifying testament to what can happen when hate is given a free rein. But Hitler's reign of terror didn't stop at the borders of Germany. His aggressive foreign policy, driven by a twisted belief in German racial superiority and a desire for territorial expansion, set the world on a path to war. He annexed Austria and the Sudetenland, violating treaties and ignoring international outcry. Then, in September of 1939, he invaded Poland, effectively triggering World War II. In the years that followed, Hitler's armies swept across Europe, leaving a trail of destruction and suffering in their wake. Cities were bombed, countries occupied, and countless lives were lost. Hitler's dream of a global German Reich, a world dominated by an Aryan master race, had become a nightmarish reality. As we reflect on this reign of terror, it's important to remember that it was not inevitable. It was the result of choices made by individuals, by leaders, and by societies. It's a stark reminder of the dangers of hate, of unchecked power, and of the perils of indifference in the face of evil. Hitler's quest for a global German Reich led to untold suffering and destruction. It's a chapter in our history that we must never forget, lest we risk repeating the mistakes of the past. Like all tyrants, Hitler's reign of terror was not to last forever. As World War II raged on, the tide began to turn against Germany. The Allied forces, fueled by determination and a collective desire for justice, began to reclaim lost ground. In the face of these mounting defeats, Hitler's behavior became increasingly erratic. Paranoia seeped into his decision-making, and the once seemingly invincible dictator began to unravel. The world watched as Hitler's iron grip on Europe faltered. With each passing day, the Allies advanced further, pushing the once formidable German forces back. The turning point was perhaps the failed Operation Valkyrie, an assassination attempt on Hitler by his own officers. This attempt on his life, along with several others, only seemed to fuel his growing instability. Hitler's final days were spent in a bunker in Berlin, far removed from the grandeur and pomp of his earlier reign. Isolated and desperate, the dictator was a mere shadow of the man who had once held the world at bay with his fiery speeches and grandiose promises of a 1,000-year Reich. The end came in April 1945. As the Allies closed in on Berlin, Hitler made the decision to take his own life. His suicide marked the end of his reign, a reign that had brought unparalleled destruction and suffering to the world. Yet, even in death, Hitler's influence did not wane. His ideology, his actions, and the scars they left behind continue to shape the world to this day. His reign may have ended, but the aftershocks of his rule are still felt. Hitler's death marked the end of a dark era, but his legacy continues to cast a long shadow over history. His story serves as a grim reminder of the destructive power of hate and the importance of standing against it. Even as we remember the fall of this dictator, we must never forget the lessons his reign taught us. Adolf Hitler's life was a paradox, a journey from a struggling artist to a dictator that changed the course of history. He transitioned from a soldier in World War I to being the instigator of the Second World War. The rise of the Nazi Party under his leadership, driven by a toxic brew of nationalism and racial superiority, led to a reign of terror that the world had never seen before. Hitler's actions, however, were not without consequence. His fall was as dramatic as his rise, culminating in a devastated Germany and a world forever altered. His life and actions have left an indelible mark on world history, a chilling testament to the destructive power of hate and prejudice. Yet, through the ashes of this dark period, humanity has gleaned important lessons. We've learned the value of unity, tolerance, and peace, and the dangers of unchecked power and blind hate. Hitler's life serves as a stark reminder of the destructive power of hate and the enduring importance of tolerance and peace.